6th, 2020. So we will call this public meeting to order. I would ask that everyone who's on the call, if they wouldn't mind, to mute their phones unless they're speaking. Then we won't have a bunch of feedback. And when you do introduce yourself, coming up to the proverbial microphone, please state your name and spell it as well. So with that, we would like to acknowledge that this event takes place in the Aboriginal territories of the Salish and Kootenai people, and would ask you all to join Dave and Emmy and I in the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you very much. Anyone out there have a public announcement?
I would like to make an announcement that if folks are able and willing, please give blood through the American Red Cross. They are in short supply these days, and willingly would take your reservation to do so, which I did this afternoon.
Well done, thanks. All right, are any public comment on items not on the agenda?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, ma'am.
This is Jean Curtis. I just want to make public comment that I learned yesterday that the governor has given counties the authority to do the primary election by mail ballot only, and I know you guys have considered all of this, but I just wanted to show strong support for that for Missoula County. Thank you.
Thanks, Mrs. Curtis. That is indeed our plan. Our current claims list, claims received as of February 28th, 2020 to March 18th, 2020 by the Commissioner's Office, total $4,331,485.19. We have 3 hearings today. The first hearing is on the Pine Drive petition, and I believe Steve Nide and Jean Curtis will speak to us. Steve, are you out there?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm going to defer to Jean. She has some late-breaking news. I think we may be breaking the record again. Oh, sorry. Steve Nide here.
Mr. Chairman, this is Jean Curtis, and he's right. The heirs of the property and their attorney didn't like the agreement that the sewer district attorney wrote up. I told Steve today that I thought I was going to write a non-lawyer agreement because it sounded a little too much. So we really are right there that they didn't like some of the liabilities they'd written in. So we do need to ask to defer one more time. I don't know when your next meeting is, however.
We're working on that. Hang on a second. How about May 7th?
May 7th?
Yeah, would that work?
You know, I think I have a doctor's appointment. You never know whether you still have a doctor's appointment because of the...
Hello? Hello?
Yes.
Are you there?
Yes, we are.
Okay, hold on a second. I'm going to put it on speakerphone for okay?
I don't know who
Are you still there?
Yeah, sir, we're in the middle of our first public hearing on the Pine Drive Road petition, and if you're not involved with that, you might need to wait a few moments.
Do you want to call this office back or we'll be on there?
I'm not sure what you're calling in about, sir.
Hold on a second. I'm taking you on speakerphone.
Gene, would you like to continue on? What do you think about May 7th? Or do you want us to push it out farther than that?
No, May 7th is okay. You don't have a meeting in April?
We do, but it's currently full.
Did you hear that part? Emmy says we do, but it's currently full.
I know, if we really are successful, it will only take a minute.
Yeah.
documents are ready to go to bid.
What's the
And we
date
can
on
have
it?
this,
Well, okay, let's put you in for April 9th, and we'll just keep our fingers crossed.
Okay, thank you very much. I will sign out then, thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, now we're on to the Klein family transfer hearing. Our very own Matt Heimel will offer us a staff report.
All right, good afternoon, Commissioners. This is Matt Heibel. Before I continue, I just want to ask, is my audio coming through clearly?
Could you amp up your volume a bit?
You're coming through good here for Mike Klein. Whoever that was just now is echoing so loud, I can barely understand it.
I don't know if you meant me or Matt.
You're the one that's echoing really bad, it's hard to understand.
I have it all because
Man, we should just have him here sitting far apart.
Okay, Commissioner Logan, Matt Heibel, Community and Services. For your consideration is a family transfer exemption. And in lieu of a PowerPoint presentation, we provided you with a packet with some images. So in your printout or what you see in your electronic packet, there will be a cover page, 3 maps of the property, one that's far, one that's the kind of a middle view, that's in the vicinity, and one that's zoomed up close, followed by a land use designation map, or a soil policy map, and then 2 images of the transfer, both existing and proposed. So with that, we'll go into initial summary. So this request is from Order Mike Klein to use the Family Transfer Exemption in Montana Subdivision and Plating Act. You create and transfer 2 parcels. One parcel will be transferred to his spouse, Linda Marie Klein, and the other to his son, Patrick Dylan Klein. This property is located at 16990 Touche Lane in the Frenchtown area, and that's approximately 0.65 90. So now, for reference to the growth policy map, the property is unzoned and located within the area described in the Missoula County growth policy dating back to 1975 comprehensive plan. And the growth policy recommends a residential density of 1 dwelling unit per 10 acres in this area.
Matt, could you repeat that on the growth policy piece? I didn't catch what you said.
So the growth policy 2016 dates back to, the designations for this area date back to the 1975 comprehensive plan. And in this area, it's a residential dwelling of 1 dwelling unit per 10 acres.
Hello? Are you continuing, Matt, or can I say something?
Who is that?
Hi, Klein.
Not yet, sir.
You're hard to understand.
Should I say something?
Mr. Klein, this is Commissioner Juanita Vera. Can you understand me?
I can understand you very well.
Okay. I think Chairman Slotnick is in a very large room, so it echoes pretty badly. But so I think what's going to happen now is that Matt Heimel is going to go through his presentation, and then you'll have a chance to speak.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Matt, go ahead. I'm on mute.
Ooh. So do you think Juan is still talking to all those other people?
right now. We never had yeah, maybe try that right now. And yeah, so.
Technical difficulties, folks.
I mean, we could have had people just far apart. Don't worry about it at all. I mean, we're in new, uncharted territory. Yeah.
Welcome to conference calling. We will now connect you to your call.
That's actually pretty clear.
Enter your attendee PIN followed by star. If you do not have your attendee PIN, just press star.
Hey there.
Hey, Matt. This is Dave Strohmeyer and Josh Long. We lost you there briefly. Our apologies. We're trying to figure out this technology.
You still there, Matt? Yeah. Can you hear Dave and I?
Can you hear us?
Oh,
Okay,
great.
Is this better than before? It is. Okay.
Much better.
Oh, good.
We can hear you two really well.
Oh, great. Excellent. Okay, Matt, do you mind just starting again? Because it was really clunky before.
Yeah, can you start from the beginning?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, take it from the top. Take two. Yes, sir.
Matt Heimel again with CAT. Keep in mind again that we don't have this one here, but I'll just give another summary of how the packet is laid out. We still have 3 maps showing different levels of scale for the subject property. One is not far, one is the vicinity, another is kind of a close-up view. Followed by the pro
Hold on.
map.
Hold on, Matt. Can everyone who's on mute their phone while Matt's talking? There's just a lot of feedback.
How big is this?
Okay, go ahead, Matt. Sorry.
Oh, I see. 11.
Okay, Matt Heimel again with CAPS. We have 3 maps of different scale for the property, then a grid policy map, and 2 maps showing the lot configuration. So we have this request for reconsideration, commissioners, from David M. Klein to use the family transfer exemption from the Montana Subdivision and Plating Act. And the proposal is to create and transfer 2 parcels. One parcel for his spouse, Linda Marie Klein, and the other to his son, Patrick Gillen Klein. And this property is located at 16990 Touche Lane in the Frenchtown area, about 0.65 miles north of Interstate 90. And the property is not zoned, and it's located within the area described in the Missoula County growth policy dating back to the 1975 comprehensive plan. And the growth policy recommends a residential density of 1 dwelling unit per 10 acres. So if you refer to the Klein family transfer existing tract image, that's the existing configuration of the parcel C. And the 2 houses shown in that image, on the upper part of the image, are proposed. The only existing house is on the south part of the property. And the 11.29 acre property was originally created as parcel C of Certificate of Survey 65 in 1973. And for your reference, there's also a printout of Certificate of Survey 65 in your packets for reference on parcel C. And with that survey, a total of 4 parcels over 10 acres were created, exempt from subdivision review. then if we look at the following image for the proposed tract layout, 3 total tracts would be the result of this family transfer exemption. So the existing parent tract would be reduced from 11.29 acres to 3.65 acres as parcel C1 on the south side of the property. The tract transfer to the claimant's son will be on the northeast portion of the property, and that would be 3.3 acres in size. And then on the northwest part of the property, there's a section that is separated by two-share lane that bisects the existing parcel, and that 4.32 acre area would be parcel C3 transferred to the claimant's spouse with this proposal. And so, and then the proposal includes 2 new single-family houses built in the future, as shown on the proposed tract layout. So now we'll move on to a summary of the general evasion criteria and rebuttable presumptions for evasion of subdivision review. So family transfer requests are reviewed pursuant to our subdivision regulations, where we look at these criteria to determine if it's an attempt to evade subdivision review. And 4 rebuttable presumptions and 5 general evasion criteria were triggered in review of this proposal. So I will briefly state what that rebuttable presumption or criteria was, and if needed, commissioners, please feel free to ask me to elaborate and go into more detail on each. So the first of 4 rebuttable presumption is that a transfer of a tract of land by one family member to another by quitclaim deed is followed by an attempted use of this exemption on the same tract. And this tract was transferred solely to the claimant by quitclaim deed this past January, previously under joint ownership between the claimant and the spouse since September 2001. The second rebuttable presumption being that the landowner intends to divide land for the purpose of the gift or sale to the landowner's spouse. The third of 4 rebuttable presumptions is that the division appears to be made for the purpose of speculation and resale for benefit of the landowner, and that is maybe indicated if the receiving family members don't have their intent to reside on the actual transfer tracts. And the fourth rebuttable presumption being no clear intent declared on the occupancy of the transfer tracts by family members. The application and surrounding information includes clear intent for receiving family members to own and construct houses on the transfer tracts, but the intent of receiving family members to occupy the transfer tracts is not clearly demonstrated here. And then moving on to 5 general evasion criteria. The first of 5, that the original transfer tract, or the original tract, was transferred to the claimant in the past 2 years. And I just described how the claimant has had sole ownership by quitclaim deed since January. The second evasion criteria being that the division will result in a pattern of development equivalent to a subdivision without local government review. And those pattern of developments can be evidenced by if the tracts share common roads with other parcels and subsequent land transfers, and also if the new tracts have a similar shape and size to adjacent or nearby platted lots. The third of 5 evasion criteria being that the requested exemption is not suitable for the intended use or purpose of the division, and that it's not clear if the claimant's spouse and son intend to reside on the transferred tracts. And the fourth of 5 evasion criteria being that the proposed division is not compatible with the growth policy. And again, the proposal will exceed the density of 1 dwelling unit per 10 acres that's recommended by the Missoula County growth policy. So we'll have now 1 dwelling per 4 to 3 acres. And the fifth and final evasion criteria on this is that the information provided indicates that the exemption is being used to evade the Montana Subdivision Plating Act and these regulations, and circumstances of the application indicate that the exemption is being used to evade the Montana Subdivision Plating Act. And so some additional information. The application was sent out to county agencies for comment. We received no comments or concern from Public Works Department and Surveyor's Office. the floodplain administrator commented that the location is not within a FEMA designated floodplain, and it's not at risk from the adjacent French County irrigation canal. And the clerk and recorder office did provide a comment regarding the complexity of legal descriptions for tracts of record on the subject property. And based on the facts as presented in the exemption affidavit and reviewed by our staff, there does appear to be an attempt to evade subdivision review. And commissioners, I now have questions for the applicant if he's still available on the line with us to answer these questions.
Yes.
Okay, can you please state your name for the record?
David Michael Klein.
Okay, thank you. I have 5 questions for you. One, did you buy the property with the intent of dividing it?
No, I did not.
Thank you. Do you or your transferees intend to transfer the property within the next year?
No, we do not.
Have you talked to anyone at the county about going through subdivision review?
No, we have not.
4, will the property be developed?
It will be developed only as 2 single-family homes for my wife and I on parcel C, and parcel 2 would be for my son's vacation home because he doesn't live in this.
Okay, thank you. And then final question, will the recipients of the properties be residing on the property?
My wife, Linda, and I, Mike, will both be living on parcel C3, and I don't know at what time Patrick would actually move to parcel C2.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, that concludes my presentation. I'm available for any further questions on the matter.
Matt, this is Juanita Vero, or David, who lives, or who would, the third parcel in the,
Are you
intended for the third parcel?
C1.
okay?
Yeah, what's going to happen with C1?
C1 is where we currently live. That's where our home is, and it's where we've resided since 1990.
So you're going to build a house on C3, right?
If this is granted, that is our wish to build a house on C because of mainly my wife's health situation and the maintenance it takes to keep lower level property. She's not able to do it, and I work out of state 9 months of the year. So it's a real problem. Try to maintain all of this. We want to downsize, build a small house on C3.
And then what would you do? What would you do with C1?
C1, we'll just get rid of it, and hopefully, we don't want anything to do with C1 after we get this little house built. Our son does not want anything to do with the current house because there's so much deep.
So Mr. Klein, you do realize what you just said is by way of saying you're planning on wanting to get rid of one of the parcels. That is the definition of evading subdivision.
Well, I was told that the parent piece could be got rid of. If we cannot get rid of it, I could rent it out.
Well, you did describe your desire to get rid of it, which is basically subdivision.
I was told that was the parent piece of property, and that was the whole idea of downsizing, was to get into a small house. It wouldn't make much into a small house, but then have a big house vacant below me.
Oh, I absolutely empathize with the need for downsizing, and our hearts go out to you and your family for having to deal with this. It does sound as if though you're using family transfer as a way to create a new tract to live on and then sell off the old one, whether it was the parent or not. And that is, in essence, subdivision.
And it truly is unfortunate if that's the advice that was given you, and I think today I would want to make very loud and clear to the development community, either on the phone or out there, that we've seen a number of these sorts of proposals come before us recently that we have denied, and we have not yet voted on this yet, obviously, but I would strongly encourage consultants, engineering firms out there, land use development firms to take note of this and counsel your clients accordingly.
Okay, you were a little bit hard to hear, but and
I'm sorry, the upshot of my comments were I would highly encourage consultants who are land use consultants and engineering firms to counsel their clients with the reality in mind that we've denied a number of proposals similar to this where there have been criteria that appear to be the rebuttable assumptions, presumptions that appear to be evasions of subdivision, and I'm very sorry, Mr. Klein, that if you were counseled that this is a good route to go, but I would want to just make loud and clear to the any developers on the line today or who are out there in the community that please take note. I don't think any of us want to waste anyone's time or money going down this path for the result that may occur today.
okay, so
This is James Sage with Missoula Engineering. We'd just like to respond to that on behalf of our company and the application that we prepared. Our counsel with Mr. Klein was in compliance with the requirements for a family transfer exemption. During that counsel, we made it very clear that there was a 2-year holding period on property, and outlined the evasion criteria to it. It's beyond our scope to tell Mr. Klein whether or not to pursue the application process. So I just want to make that clear.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Any further comment on the Klein family transfer?
okay, well, I have a couple things prepared to about, and one of them is my wife's health. And are you? Oh, she's been sick. She was in the hospital 5 weeks at the first of the year. ICU for 13 days of it. This is a very large piece of property. And the whole intent was all house, but you guys, if the intent is that you want us to keep the smaller house for a period of time, or the large house for a period of this house, willing with the council, if you notice this piece of property has a road going right, everybody within at least a quarter mile has already got piece. It's the biggest piece of land in the entire area. Everybody gets the use of our property, her property, her expense, and 2 levels. We don't even get to enjoy the up on the lower part. Just naturally split with a road in it, and it makes clear. I mean, if we cannot grant it into 3 parcels, we grant it into 2 parcels, and we'll deed the one to my son, C3, and leave the other 2 and C1 as 1 unit. We'll just give that to, we'll deed it over to Patrick. I don't know what at this point. I'm willing, since that one piece is naturally cut out because of a road, 7 other families above us, possibly, and we possibly cut that piece, get a 2-parcel and transfer?
Mr. Klein, I think the issue here isn't whether or not you should cut this property up and build a house that meets your family's needs. The issue is how best to do that. And given that what you're hoping to do is to sell one piece of property, then you should go through minor subdivision, and you could certainly reach your goals that way. That's the proper tool, as opposed to a family
Well, I'll
transfer.
tell you what, I could hang on to that property. I do not have to sell the property. I was told it could be sold, but you guys are saying I was informed correctly. So I just trying to make this work. I can make sure my wife, while I'm not here, I'm actually scheduled to leave to go back to Alaska tomorrow for 3 months. My schedule is very demanding also. This is not fair that we have a teleconference. I cannot look you guys in the eye. I'm not liking not being able to understand half of what that.
Yeah, it isn't a good situation, for sure.
This is James Sage with Missoula Engineering. I'd like to comment a little bit about the evasion criteria and the intent of Mr. Klein to provide this property. The way that the family transfer exemption criteria is worked in Montana is that the original parcel is not subject to a 2-year holding period. So I think that is what Mr. Klein's referring to. So the intent was that in the future, he may build a house for his wife to reside in due to her illness and his availability given his work schedule in Alaska. There's no intent to sell any of those transferred parcels, either C3 or C2.
He said.
Parcel C1 is an original tract of record, and therefore it's not under the same criteria as C3 and C2 as far as the transfership of owners. It can legally be sold prior to the 2-year holding period. Tract C3 and C2 cannot. Similar to Mr. Klein could sell the entire parent parcel currently. He's not under any kind of subject restrictions for that process. His intent is not to subdivide for the purpose of evading subdivision regulation. His intent is to divide the land to gift to his family and to provide a stable home for his wife, Linda, while she is in Alaska 9 months out of the year.
So if that was the case, why not just divide it in half, give one piece to the son, and then build a new house on the property on the other piece? Why make that third piece to get rid of?
Right, and that's what Mr. Klein was referring to later on in the conversation, that he would be willing to consider that and basically take tract C3 that's being proposed,
right,
and give that to his son for a vacation home, and then keep the remaining entire tract as one. So essentially, he would create one new tract, and C2 and C1 would be aggregated as one tract.
That would be a very different situation than the one that's before us now.
Would that be something you would be willing to look at, though?
Yes.
I mean, we would
That
look
would-
at anything,
Yeah.
but there's no guarantee that it will, what the result will be.
Okay. I just think it might be, since you're kind of making me feel like you think I'm doing this for profit and going to sell it, I don't need that other lot. That was for our son. And if we just do the 2 lots, he can have the other lot when we die. I still like that lot in my wife's name, but if it has to be in my son's name, that's okay too. So I guess if you want us to redo this, to resubmit it, I will get with James and we could try that.
That would certainly be an option. As to whether or not it's your wife or your son would be the recipient of the parcel, I guess I would, and I'm just speaking on my own behalf here, it's a little more speculative when we've seen folks try to transfer a tract to a spouse, which then leads one to wonder, and I know this is not your intent as you've articulated today, Mr. Klein, but it does give the appearance that unless that other spouse is actually residing on the newly created parcel, that there is something else afoot, which would not be the case if it was transferred to an adult child.
Okay. My state would have no problem letting us build a home on it and live in there, so I can go that direction.
This is James Sage with Missoula Engineering, and there's something I'd like you guys to take into consideration with all of this, because I think some of this is unclear at this point to Mr. Klein, just through the teleconference aspect of things. But one point that I would like to make is Linda Klein has her own children that were adopted by Mr. Klein, or not adopted by Mr. Klein. So in giving a parcel to his son, he's essentially creating a sense of inequality between living family members, if that makes sense. So if Linda were to receive this tract and pass away, it would get distributed to her heirs, whereas Mr. Klein is going to gift a parcel to their combined son. So it creates equitable value between the family. And that's, I think, an important consideration with the family transfer is family planning. And that's the intent of family transfer application. I can tell you right now,
Mr. Sage, I think that sounds all well and good. Then maybe what should have happened is tract 1 should be kept or given to one child, and tract 2 another, and tract 3 another, and there you go, you have family planning. But about 15 minutes ago, Mr. Klein said his intent was to, quote, get rid of parcel C1, which doesn't sound like the kind of family planning you're talking about. If you want to do that family planning and you have adult children, this seems family transfer could be a great tool. Chop it up and give it to those children.
And that's what I'm saying is those children, as adopted children, do not qualify to use the family transfer exemption.
Why not? Doesn't seem right. John, are you on the line there?
I'm on the line.
Is that true that an adopted child couldn't receive a piece of property through family transfer?
Non-adopted child.
It's true that a non-adopted child, it has, the relationship has to be by adoption or by blood.
Then what is a non-adopted or non-blood child then? I don't understand what that relationship would be.
Well, for purposes of an exemption from the Subdivision and Platting Act, it's an individual who doesn't qualify to receive an exempt parcel of land.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, can I tell you a little bit about Patrick? Maybe it'd be kind of nice to know who Patrick is. He was 2 years old when we moved to Frenchtown. We chose Frenchtown because of our school district. It's the best in the state. He graduated here with his original class and graduated with high honors. He's gone to college for aerospace in Colorado. He is an aerospace engineer. First job he was working in Long Beach, California for Virgin Orbit, writing a system shutdown code for for the orbiter that's going to take people to outer space, the paying customers back. Since Blue Origin and Washington to get close, I asked Pat if he's working on the Genesis rocket engine writing code for it right now. That's Missoula and the state of Montana offers him no job of qualifications here. He has to work out of state until further time. I asked Pat, I said, do you want to take home as we older? He told me, no, Dad, I don't want to because it's too old of a house and there's upkeep. I asked him, would you be interested with the land? Would you be interested? He said, yes, interested. I could build a vacation home there. The way I look at this, I will back to Frenchtown if he has a piece of property. If you guys deny this, he has no need to come back because he has nothing other than wait for us to die. I'd like to come back, build a summer home, enjoy his parents and the property a little bit before we get too old. Little history on Pat. Very smart, very wise. Is not going to move on it tomorrow. His plan is to have something to do here in Frenchtown as long as we're here. As far as Linda, her health is extremely poor. Heard the story about that. And why I'm saying, if we have to one parcel and, just we could do that, but to do that, I don't see why the 3 doesn't work, but I'm willing to do whatever I have to downsize for my wife. I don't sell home. I can rent that out of another house. It's great horse property, it's great piece of land. It's like living on a farmer's field in like 99% people do. So I don't want to just land away in the sale and then have to. If we do, we're going to move out of the state. We don't even want to be here if we can't be on this property. I cannot keep living on this property downsize the home. That's all I have.
So, Mr. Klein, thank you for that. My sense would be that the tool that you're proposing to use today to create 2 additional lots is not the correct one for that purpose. If you went through minor subdivision, that would be a different story. If you were just wanting to family transfer one parcel to split your current parcel into two segments and give one to your son, I don't see that as being such an issue. It's this third parcel that you're looking at gifting to your spouse that is creating the hang-up. So, we could either move forward today and vote this up or down, or another option would be, and I would let our county attorney weigh in on this, you could certainly withdraw your application and go back to the drawing board with something that might be more workable.
Okay. I have no problem doing it in a 2-parcel piece. We will have to change some boundaries around. Even if it's a 2-parcel, it could include C3 and C2 as one parcel and C1 as another parcel, correct?
That's fine. You want to give one of those to your son and live on the other? That's
I'll
great.
give the one to, I might give him the current, he doesn't want the current one, so we'll have to give him the upper, so that would be the one. So
that's up to you.
What supposed to do at this point? Pull it back, resubmit it in a different drawing, in a different format with a 2-lot setup?
That would be up to you. That's one option.
Vero. Okay. And yes, I'm sorry, Mr. Klein, and I'm apologizing for how incredibly awkward all of this is. But yes, I'd feel more comfortable if you withdrew this application and resubmitted another one that gets at what you're trying to achieve.
If looks like council is going to reject proposal as is exactly what I want to do is withdraw this proposal then.
And you want
Resubmit it.
Yeah.
My sense is that's probably the way we're leaning today, and
If you were dead set on 3 pieces, just use, as Dave was saying, just use a different tool. Use minor subdivision, and then you could end up with 3. This is just about choosing which tool and what goal your is. What's your ultimate goal?
My ultimate goal is I build a house up her property to downsize my wife. It's okay, my grant me permission, even if it's in his name, to put a small house there, because it'll be on his land, it'll be his house when I'm done anyway. So,
Good. Well, then it sounds like
what,
you might be able to do this with family transfer, just not as it's drawn today.
Okay, I will get with the engineer, and we will redraw the property lines and resubmit.
And again, we apologize for the clunkiness of the technology today. Absolutely, we agree with you that it would be nice to be in the same room looking each other in the eye, and hopefully we will get past this health crisis soon and be able to do so.
Okay, so I will resubmit it in the near future then, okay?
Okay.
Excuse me, so this is John Hart, the Deputy County Attorney. Just so we have a clear record, I would ask Mr. Klein if it is his intent to withdraw this application, that he just states that intent on the record.
I intend to withdraw the application as is.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Klein, and thank you, Mr. Sage.
Thank you.
And thanks, John.
Thank you.
And we're gonna take a quick pause to mess with technology, and then we'll be right back with our third hearing of the afternoon. And then turn this off. Or do we have to have this one? All right, we're on to our third hearing of the afternoon on interim zoning for cryptocurrency mining extension with Diana Mineta and Jenny Dixon. Are you guys out there?
Good afternoon. Yes, we are out here. Diana, confirm? Yes, I'm here. Excellent. So just like everybody prior, I want to make sure you can hear me okay.
We can. Yeah, you're pretty good.
Excellent. Okay. Perfect. So we do have a fairly concise slideshow. However, since we are not video chatting, we are hoping you're in possession of the slideshow either on your screen or on paper.
Yes. We have paper.
And excellent. And I believe that for anyone in the public that slideshow is also made available on the county's portal through the agenda and a civic clerk report. And if Emmy's there, she can correct me if I'm wrong. But we are going to follow those 10 or 15 slides through the discussion to get you to a point where we want to get you to a point where you're able to take action on the request to extend the interim zoning for the cryptocurrency mining operations. So let me just start off with slide 1, which is the intro slide. And what we're going to do is I'm going to just give a kind of a what to expect in this presentation. Diana's going to talk about cryptocurrency mining in general and locally, what the implications are, and then I'm going to talk more about what the zoning proposal, what the zoning regulations read right now, what the proposal is, what they mean, and then Diana's going to dive back in and talk specifically about the new renewable energy condition or requirement for cryptocurrency mining operations under these zoning regulations. The last slide of our show contains the recommended motion. And before we start to move through these 10 or 15 slides, I do want to make sure that you are either in possession of or familiar with your civic clerk packet. And for the benefit of the public who may not have that up front in front of them, I just want to describe what is in that packet. The first,
sorry, this is Juanita real quick, and it's not, I'm not able to access the packet from the portal.
Okay.
I'm sorry to.
That's okay. I'm not in a rush at all. We will work through this. I am not by any stretch of the imagination a civic clerk expert. So I'm going to ask, is Emmy or Sarah on the line?
We do have Emmy right here.
And it looks like she's working on
Okay.
it.
She's feverishly working on this. I think it will be landing in moments.
It might be easier if she just emails it to me.
That's what she's doing.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And actually, while she, go ahead, Juanita.
Oh, this is Diana. Actually, I was just going to say for members of the public who may be on the line, I defer to Emmy on this, but I see when I'm on the county's website under Commissioners Meeting Minutes and Agenda Portal for this meeting, if I select Agenda Packet, it does download that packet for me. So I hope that the public's able to access it that way.
Thank you, Diana.
Go ahead, sorry.
Okay, so this is Jenny Dixon again, and while you're getting that packet emailed to you from Emmy, let me just also mention that we directly notified through email all the folks who in the past year and a half have expressed interest in this topic, as well as our general notification email address book, which contains over 800 people that we have sent this to. So nearly 1,000 people have received notifications of this hearing and the proposal, as well as going out on our Facebook pages, Missoula County posts, and press releases. We also directly notified the cryptocurrency mining operation currently operating over in Bonner, Montana, Hyperblock, with attached agendas and the civic clerk packet. So they should be in possession of that, and hopefully someone is on the line from Hyperblock. But we did also receive a number of comments that I will go over here shortly. But prior to that, I want to make sure. Have you received that civic clerk packet, Linda?
Yes, I have it. I have what Emmy just sent me, which is the other civic clerk packet the packet that Cameron just sent me. Thank you.
Okay.
No problem.
Okay, well, so let me describe for all of you what's in that packet, so you know what we're looking at. The first is a staff report that just lays out the background of this proposal, which, as I said, is to extend for one additional year countywide interim zoning relative to cryptocurrency mining operations. The first attachment to that staff report are the existing regulations. We are not proposing any changes to those, and therefore they are also the proposed regulations to extend for one additional year. We also, as a second attachment, included a draft resolution that provides the basis for why this proposed zoning is appropriate and meets the criteria for emergency. The third attachment, and please feel free to stop me if you have any questions. The third attachment is an op-ed piece from last year that we really felt for anyone in the public who was struggling to understand what this is, what it does, and why the county is doing, has been doing this, that this was a really good piece to do that. And it explains that this is not a moratorium and that it is being proposed and was adopted last year to address excessive energy use in the face of a climate change emergency, and that new renewable energy is critical to address that emergency. And fifth, that this zoning is not aimed at any particular business, but rather to get control of the crypto mining industry energy consumption countywide. The fourth attachment is something that you did not see last year. It's a study that is required by law. We are continuing to investigate this issue and the zoning, and may ultimately propose it as permanent zoning. And that study, which is out on our website, describes that. There is, for whatever unknown reason, and I'm totally responsible, there is another attached set of regulations that is just a duplicate of that first attachment. It says attachment A. It's the same thing as the first attachment to the staff report. And finally, there's an attachment that was something that we drafted in the last month to answer what we felt are frequently asked questions about these zoning regulations and cryptocurrency in general. And throughout this presentation, those questions will generally be answered. So I'm not going to go over that fact sheet in detail. But we would be happy to answer any questions if you look at that and it triggers some questions. The last attachment, and actually we have had many more comments since the Civic Clerk's report was issued, is one page of public comment. We have since then received 47 separate comments from the public, either in the form of email or letters, and a Google form where people could go onto our website and just submit their comments that way. All 47 comments expressed support of the interim zoning and ultimately permanent zoning, and expressed also concern about the impacts. Most, if not all, expressed appreciation for the county's leadership with the innovative and effective regulations that Missoula County has adopted. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Diana to talk to you a little bit about cryptocurrency mining in general and from a local perspective.
Thanks, Jenny. For the record, this is Diana Mineta with CAPS. So after those items in the Civic Clerk packet and the packet available on the website for the public, you'll find the slides that I'll be referring to as I go through this presentation. So we're going to move on to slide 2, which is titled, What is Cryptocurrency Mining? And we did want to start with a little bit of background on the topic of cryptocurrency mining. There is some overlap here. Yeah.
So I'm so sorry for apologizing. This is Jamie Bowditch. But maybe just, if we could remind people who are not speaking to mute, it'll help with the feedback immensely and make everything a lot clearer, I think.
Great. Yeah, that's a great suggestion, Jamie. I suspect that what we may be hearing, those of us on the phone, is I'm hearing myself in the hearing room, I think. I don't know if there's a way to mute the hearing room itself or not, but I think that's a lot of the feedback that we're hearing on the phone is an echo of ourselves.
Yeah, we will try to get this figured out next time. Sorry for that. I think we're stuck with
Yeah, this is version 1.0.
Okay, this is Diana again. I'll proceed. So again, a little bit of background on cryptocurrency mining. To answer that, we first have to consider what a cryptocurrency is. A cryptocurrency is a digital currency that's maintained using something called a blockchain. A blockchain is a distributed ledger. Ledger meaning a list of transactions, and distributed meaning it's held and maintained not by a central entity like a government or a bank, but by many people or entities who, in the case of Bitcoin, are anonymous and may be located anywhere in the world. Bitcoin was the first cryptocurrency and remains the largest, but there are many others as well. So when you buy something with Bitcoin, your transaction is grouped together with a bunch of other recent transactions into something called a block. That block is sent out to all the participants who are involved in maintaining the blockchain, and those participants compete to solve a complex mathematical puzzle associated with the block. There's no trick to solving these puzzles. It's just a matter of using lots and lots of computational capacity, kind of like generating random numbers until you hit upon the solution. Whoever solves the puzzle first gets to add that block of transactions to the blockchain and is rewarded with newly issued units of Bitcoin. That reward is their motivation for doing this. And that process is what's called mining, because it's the way that new currency enters into circulation. So again, for context, in the early years of Bitcoin, mining was something that typically people did on their home computers. But over time, as the price of Bitcoin increased, mining got more and more lucrative and more competitive. And people started doing it on a larger scale, using lots and lots of computers. And specialized computers were developed that just mine cryptocurrency and do nothing else. So essentially what we've seen is the centralization of Bitcoin mining in these large operations, many of which mine other cryptocurrencies as well as Bitcoin. So, back to what is cryptocurrency mining? In a physical sense, a large cryptocurrency mining operation is thousands or tens of thousands of specialized computers that were built specifically for this purpose and run 24 hours a day, as well as cooling equipment to prevent those computers from overheating. So, I'm going to move on to slide 3, blockchains and cryptocurrency mining. As I mentioned, a blockchain is a ledger that records transactions in a cryptocurrency. All cryptocurrencies use blockchains, but not all cryptocurrencies use the same type of blockchain. In particular, they don't all use what are called proof-of-work-based blockchains. That proof-of-work process is what I previously referred to as mining. So cryptocurrencies that don't use the proof-of-work process don't involve mining. They don't involve those types of calculations. They require negligible amounts of computational power and electricity compared to the proof-of-work system. We did go into more detail on this topic at a hearing that the county held, I believe it was September of 2018, and that information is available online for anyone who is interested in delving deeper into that topic. I won't go into it more now, other than to note that some people believe that cryptocurrency may eventually move away from the proof-of-work system altogether due to its inefficiencies and that tremendous energy consumption in favor of other systems. And at that point, cryptocurrency mining would no longer be needed. So I think it is important to understand that you can have cryptocurrencies and blockchains in general without having cryptocurrency mining operations or excessive energy consumption. I'm going to move on to slide 4. One question that came up a number of times last year and the year before as we were researching this topic was, is there a difference between cryptocurrency mining operations and traditional data centers? And if so, what is the difference? What we learned is that yes, there is a difference, and it's a result of the difference in function of the two types of facilities. A cryptocurrency mining operation, its function is to process data as quickly as possible. What it doesn't do is store data, and that's what sets it apart from most traditional data centers, which both store and process data. Storing data requires a higher level of security, reliability, and redundancy than just processing data. For these reasons, cryptocurrency mining operations are often sited in more lightweight buildings, like warehouses or storage facilities. They often use open rack shelving, like the type shown in the left-hand picture there, which provides, again, that lower level of security as well as less control of airflow versus the cabinets that are often used in a traditional data center. Preserving the lifetime and uptime of the equipment are lower priorities in cryptocurrency mining operations, where equipment is often turned over frequently as faster models become available. Moving on to slide 5. This industry, the cryptocurrency mining industry, has shown quite a lot of interest in Montana over the past few years. There's no database that we're aware of where these facilities are located, but based on news reports, we gather that there are at least 3 large cryptocurrency mining operations in the state, and there's certainly the potential for more. When we started looking into this topic a couple of years ago, we talked with Northwestern Energy, who told us they had received inquiries from dozens of cryptocurrency mining firms that were interested in moving to Montana, and that if all of those projects were developed, it would total up to 1,000 megawatts of new electrical load versus the current load in the state across Northwestern service territory, which is about 1,600 megawatts. So 1,600 now, up to potentially 1,000 new. I don't think anyone expected all of those projects to come to fruition, but even if a small fraction of them did, it would account for really an unprecedented increase in electrical demand in the state. The reason that this industry is interested in Montana is essentially 2 reasons. One is the ability to negotiate low electrical rates based as a result of our electricity regulations in Montana, and the other is cool climate, which reduces the cost of cooling that equipment. Moving on to slide 6. This just shows other parts of the country and the world where a lot of cryptocurrency mining is happening. Those include Eastern Washington State, Northern New York State, Canada, Russia, China, the Republic of Georgia, Iceland, and Sweden. Again, the criteria typically are low electricity prices and often a cool climate. Moving on to slide 7. Here in Missoula County, the one cryptocurrency mining operation currently operating uses about as much electricity as 1/3 of the households in the county, according to our estimate. That operation at various points in the past has stated their intent to triple in size, at which point it would use about as much electricity as all of the households in the county. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Jenny.
Hi, this is Jenny again.
Hey, Jenny.
Hi. Picking up on slide 8, this slide is a list of local governments, mostly in the United States, as well as utility districts, that at one time, when we started looking at developing regulations for cryptocurrency mining, we tried to research where other locales were dealing with this issue and how they were dealing with this issue. We found that just as often as local governments were trying to develop zoning regulations or some other type of regulations to regulate and mitigate the impacts of these types of operations, utilities also were taking a look at the impacts that this industry had on electrical demand. And so these list of about 8 or 9 different locales or utilities have developed and adopted regulations that in one way or another regulate cryptocurrency mining. But I would mention that Missoula, in developing the regulations last year, took a bit of a different approach, and the primary reason that these regulations were adopted last year was due to a determination of an emergency situation that existed, particularly from the impacts of this use as they related to climate change. That emergency situation still continues to this day, if not even more emergent, and therefore staff recommendation for continuing the existing interim zoning regulations is part of what we're asking you to do today. Moving on to slide number 9. This is to just give you a general idea of what has been done previously in terms of taking public testimony and considerations for the zoning regulations. So in 2018, there were 2 public hearings. 2019, 2 more public hearings, and at that 4th public hearing in April last year, the Commission adopted a 1-year interim zoning for cryptocurrency mining. That zoning expires on April 3rd of this year. Right now, this public hearing is for extending the existing regulations for 1 more year to April 3rd, 2021, at which point the county will not be in a position to extend any further, and they will either at that point or prior to that point be incorporated as permanent zoning regulations, or they will lapse. At this point, based on our study, we determined that it is likely we will be incorporating or proposing to incorporate regulations similar to these into our permanent zoning regulations. And let's see, that covers that timeline there. So I'll move you on to slide number 10. I do want to clarify, as I mentioned at the beginning, that this is not a moratorium on cryptocurrency mining. Cryptocurrency mining operations that were in existence prior to April 4th of 2019 can continue to operate and are not subject to these regulations as the operations exist as of that date. If they were to expand, however, and I think I'm going to, I'll talk about what happens if they expand and on the next slide. So I guess what I would like to do at this point is clarify the zoning regulations have 4 conditions that these cryptocurrency mining operations need to comply with. The first is that they need to be located in areas zoned for industrial use. They must either go through a conditional use review or a special exception review and comply with performance standards to ensure that the community is protected from the hazards that we have identified resulting from this use, including but not limited to noise pollution, noise pollution, electronic waste, and energy consumption impacts. Diana will be talking more about the renewable energy requirement in detail, but I would just say that this is a county-wide overlay zone, but does not include land within the city limits. On to slide 11, this is that issue I was just talking about of non-conforming cryptocurrency mining operations. What that means is that if cryptocurrency mines existed prior to April 4th, 2019, they can continue as long as the existing structures are not enlarged, and that the mining activity does not extend into unoccupied portions of the existing structure. If, however, new operations replace a current operation or a current operation is expanded, they must comply with the regulations. I think at this point it's up for Diana to talk to you a little bit more about that renewable energy requirement.
Thanks, Jenny. So moving on to slide 12, the language of the renewable energy condition is, as shown on the slide, these facilities shall be required to develop or purchase sufficient new renewable energy to offset 100% of the electricity consumed by the cryptocurrency mining operation. It goes on, to meet this condition, a cryptocurrency mining operation must be able to establish that their actions will introduce new renewable energy onto the electrical grid beyond what would have been developed otherwise. So the key to understanding this is understanding the distinction between new and existing renewable energy. Moving on to slide 13. To talk more about this distinction. First, I want to be very clear that requiring the use of new versus existing renewable energy in this condition should not be interpreted as judgment about the relative value of new versus existing renewable energy. We're very fortunate to have the existing renewable energy resources that we have in Montana. On average, the electricity we use in the state and Northwestern Energy Service territory is about 60% renewable. Most of that's from hydropower dams, as well as some wind and a little bit of solar. And that's a great starting point. But given the urgency of addressing climate change, it's clear that we need to go further. Last year, Missoula County and the city of Missoula jointly adopted a goal of 100% clean electricity for the Missoula urban area by 2030. Again, 60% is a great starting point. We're lucky to be there, but we need to go further with urgency. And in fact, we have made that commitment to go further. So, what happens when a new large energy user comes into Montana and buys power from one of our existing renewable energy resources? Well, assuming that that clean energy was previously being used by other people, whether they were in-state customers or out-of-state, whether they were residential or commercial or industrial customers, when that new large energy user comes in, some of those other buyers will need to shift onto another source of generation. And there's no guarantee that that other source will be renewable. It might well be coal, natural gas, fossil fuel energy. So last year, when the interim zoning regulations were being developed, we struggled with how to reconcile the extremely high energy consumption of this industry with the imperative to address climate change. And what we came up with is this condition that new or expanded cryptocurrency mining is fine as long as it brings new renewable energy onto the grid along with it, as well as meeting the other conditions that Jenny described. I'll talk in a minute about specifically how that condition could be met. First, on slide 14, I do want to point out that the distinction between new and existing renewables is not one that we in Missoula County invented. It's a well-established principle among companies who think about these things. For example, 78 large corporations have signed on to the Corporate Renewable Energy Buyers Principles. Their logos are shown on slide 14 there. There are 6 principles which lay out what these corporations are looking for from utilities and energy providers when they seek to purchase renewable energy. One of the principles is, I'm quoting here, access to new projects that reduce emissions beyond business as usual. These companies make the distinction between new and existing renewable energy because they want to be sure that their use of renewable energy actually makes a difference. As another example, Google is one of over 150 corporations that have committed to achieving 100% renewable energy, and in fact, Google has already achieved that goal. Its report on how it did that includes the statement on the right-hand side of the screen there. To ensure that Google is the driver for bringing new clean energy onto the grid, we insist that all projects be additional. This means that we seek to purchase energy from not yet constructed generation facilities. So again, the important distinction between new and existing renewable energy. Finally, moving on to slide 15, I want to address how a company that wants to meet the renewable energy condition can go about doing that, given the electricity sector regulations in Montana. Last year, we identified 5 potential pathways that a company could pursue to meet the renewable energy condition. We presented the same information at the hearing last April, and I do want to present it again now just because I know there are a lot of questions on this topic. It's important to note that these 5 potential pathways are not intended to be an exhaustive list. Renewable energy technologies, policies, and markets are all evolving rapidly, and companies may well identify other options that aren't on this list that would meet the requirement. In addition, not all of these options would be available in every situation, as I'll describe. So I'm going to describe them briefly one by one. First, on-site renewable energy. That's like rooftop solar, for example. This may be limited by available space, as well as by shading and other features of the property, but it could be a solution or a partial solution in some cases. Second, physical power purchase agreements. In Montana, the vast majority of electricity customers have no choice but to purchase power from the utility that operates in their area. Only a few of the very largest businesses in the state that use more than 5 megawatts have a choice under state law and can contract directly with a different energy provider, than the default utility. They do still pay the utility for the use of their transmission lines. Any cryptocurrency mining operation that falls into that category could choose to enter into a power purchase agreement with the developer of a new renewable energy project, and that would meet this condition. Third, virtual power purchase agreements. This is a mechanism lots of big companies like Google have used to achieve 100% renewables. It's available to any company, not just those largest energy users in the state, and it's essentially a financial mechanism whereby the company contracts with a renewable energy developer, which may be located in another state, pay a fixed rate per kilowatt hour generated by a new renewable energy project. That commitment allows the project to be built, and then the buyer turns around and resells the power generated by the project into the wholesale electricity market in the region where the project is located. Fourth, green tariffs. This is another one that a lot of those corporations have utilized to achieve 100% renewables. It involves working with a utility who typically puts out a solicitation for a new renewable energy project, and then utility customers opt in to purchase power from that project and be charged for it on their power bills instead of their regular rate. I do want to note that in utility jargon, a tariff is not a tax. It's just another word for a rate that a utility charges. Several utilities in our region have developed green tariffs, and Northwestern Energy actually has recently initiated a process to consider developing a green tariff. Missoula County, as well as the city of Missoula and others, are participating in that process because we're excited about green tariffs as a way to source clean electricity for our local government operations as well as potentially for residents and businesses within the county. Finally, renewable energy certificates, or REC. REC are tradable commodities that represent proof that 1 megawatt hour of renewable electricity was generated. Typically, RECs don't distinguish new from existing renewable energy and so would not comply with the regulations. However, we understand that there may be some REC products available that are able to document that they are associated with new or additional renewable energy. So it may be possible for a company to comply with the regulations by purchasing such a product. So those are the 5 potential pathways we identified. As I mentioned earlier, there may be other options available. We didn't try to include this language in the regulations themselves because we didn't want to be prescriptive with this. We do continue to encourage companies to contact us to discuss options they may be considering and whether or not they would meet the requirements in the zoning regulations. Given the complexity of renewable energy markets, this is something that ultimately may need to be addressed on a case-by-case basis, and we're always available and happy to have those discussions. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Jenny.
Okay, so I'm going to take you to the last slide and just reiterate that we have been in discussions with cryptocurrency mining operators here in the Missoula area, and we appreciate the feedback and working with those folks. We also greatly appreciate all the comments that we've received to date and the time that people have taken to give really thoughtful comments. I would simply emphasize, as we put forward a recommended motion, that the 2016 county growth policy states that local governments should consider the impacts of climate change in policy and regulatory decisions, as well as ensure a right to a clean and healthful environment. And therefore, staff is providing a recommended motion that the county-wide zoning regulations for cryptocurrency mining previously adopted by this commission on April 4, 2019, be extended for 1 additional year until April 3rd, 2021, or until replaced by permanent zoning. And with that, I think we'll conclude our staff report and we'll be happy to entertain any questions from commission or the public.
Do we have any, Dave or Juan, do you want to ask any questions? And we'll go to public comment.
No, I'm good right now.
Anybody out there in the public like to ask Jenny or Diana a question?
Commissioner Stotlick, this is Janie Bowditch. I'm legal counsel. As people may remember for Hyperblock, is this a time to ask questions or to provide
absolutely.
comment, or maybe a little both?
A little of both is great.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Well, I mean, I'm not going to state anything new, but I remain concerned that, you know, you're adopting regulations to address an emergency, and just as a reminder, you know, the authority granted to the commissioners as far as interim zoning regulations is extremely limited, and it has to address an emergency that currently exists, and the regulations must directly address that emergency. And what you're doing here is you're basically adopting regulations in an attempt to combat climate change, which is a worldwide issue, and you're doing so primarily, if not almost exclusively, by imposing restrictions on a company that is not in any way contributing to climate change in our jurisdiction. And I'm troubled by that, and I'm also troubled by the fact, from a legal standpoint, but I'm also troubled by the fact that, you know, I appreciate that there are these options that are available. The Hyperblock has been working through the options. They are very, very very limited and very, very difficult. And the electric industry is very, very regulated and very, very nuanced and complicated. And yet, the adoption of these interim regulations requires Hyperblock to make immediate changes for purposes of potential future expansion, whereas the very county that's adopting the regulations has till 2030 to do so. And I just think that's a little bit, if not extensively, hypocritical. And so and the last comment I have is I'm a little puzzled by why we're sitting here extending these. I mean, if it's such an emergency, why has a solution not been identified as to how to adopt these regulations in a manner that might be a little more friendly to not limiting and potentially bankrupting my client?
Jenny,
so those are my public comments.
Thank you. Jenny, could you speak to the zoning question there on extension?
You bet. Yes, I can. And Diana may also be able to address the question about the equity issue of the county's clean energy requirements versus these regulations. But while I'm on the phone, while I'm here, the question is, why are we extending these now and not making them permanent? And our preference actually would be at this point to propose them as permanent zoning. Our zoning regulations require notification of all county residents by mail of any change to the county zoning regulations, which is above and beyond state law. We are in the middle of a comprehensive revision to our zoning regulations, and to do so, we will also be required to notify all county residents at a pretty hefty price tag, and we felt it was not responsible to propose these as permanent zoning regulations and do that costly notification when within the next year we plan to do that very thing, and we'll be notifying folks not only of making these permanent, but all the other proposed zoning revisions that we are in the midst of.
Thanks.
If I may, this is Diana. I can weigh in on the question Jamie raised about the 100% clean electricity goal that the city and county adopted by 2030 and how that fits with these regulations.
Great.
You know, that goal was developed with the community's existing electricity consumption in mind. How do we move that from where it is today to 100% clean electricity for our community? It doesn't, so the cryptocurrency mining regulations don't apply to existing uses of electricity. Of course, they apply to new or expanded uses. As we move toward our 100% clean electricity goal, part of that needs to be conserving energy, using it more efficiently. New enormous energy users run directly contrary to that goal unless they bring clean electricity with them.
All right, does anyone else have any comment or anything to add?
Hello, this is Gary Matson. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I have sent in a written comment, but I just have a 1.5 minute summary. I'm a resident of West Riverside in the Bonner Milltown community, and so with your permission, I'll go through this quickly. If all 47 of us who sent in comments did it, I think you'd be there all day. So anyway, just a quick comment. Cryptocurrency mines exist for the sole purpose of creating wealth for their owners. They employ very few people, produce nothing of socially redeeming value, and they consume excessive amounts of electricity. I support the right of individuals to create ventures that increase their wealth. However, these kinds of ventures can exist only because of the socioeconomic system and infrastructure that has been created by society as a whole. If the ventures do not benefit us, then at least they should not harm us. Harm is done when an excessive electricity demand diminishes the energy resource we all share. When energy is taken from existing renewable resources, it creates a demand for new generation. that Northwestern now proposes to satisfy by constructing new fossil fuel generators. At this critical time of greenhouse gas-driven climate change, fossil fuel generation must decrease and not increase. It is entirely appropriate that any expansion of cryptocurrency operations be powered by new renewable electricity resources. The interim zoning should be extended, and I do appreciate what the gentleman from the advisor for Hyperblock says, that it's hard to conceive of the emergency situation because it's not happening immediately, but it's certainly an emergency just as bad as a coronavirus. It's a prolonged consequence, but if we don't act immediately to lower our demand for electricity and introduce renewable electricity, our planet is going to be degraded tragically in the future. So it is an emergency. It's just not one that we can perceive on an hour-to-hour basis like we can the virus. So thanks for this opportunity to comment. I really appreciate Jenny's and Diana's presentation. Very, very nicely done and shows a lot about why we need to do what we need to do. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Anyone else like to comment? All right, then go right ahead.
No. Barring any further comment, this is Commissioner Dave Strohmeyer. I do think this is a prudent action to take. As Jenny suggested, there are those of us, I think, that might be poised to make what we see here permanent, but there is a lot to be said from a cost-effectiveness standpoint, folding this into our adoption of permanent regulations, and also keeping an open mind that as we fold these into our permanent regulations, there might be some adjustments that need to be made so that we don't find ourselves adopting this on a permanent basis today, and then after we adopt the full slate of permanent regulations, then we're going to have to go back and amend what we just adopted today because those are out of sync. I couldn't agree with Mr. Mattson more that we are facing a global crisis as it relates to climate change, and this is a part of our solution to help mitigate that. So with that, I would move that I would move that countywide zoning regulations for cryptocurrency mining previously adopted by this commission on April 4th, 2019 be extended one additional year until April 3rd, 2021, or until replaced by permanent zoning.
And this is Commissioner Juanita Vero, and I completely agree and second and appreciate staff report and Mr. Mattson's reference of COVID-19 and climate change. It was pithy, and so an enthusiastic second.
My only comment here is on how timely this is, in that if we were to choose to adopt this zoning on its own rather than fold it into the zoning rewrite that we're doing right now, I believe the number I'd heard was $40,000 in terms of sending out notice to everyone. And right now we could really use that money in a myriad of ways, addressing the crisis we're living through in terms of the virus.
Josh, this is Jenny. Hey, sorry, I'm so sorry to interrupt. I do want to clarify the numbers that we very preliminary to notify by postcard was about 10,000.
Oh, okay, thank you.
And that is,
well,
that's it.
I'm glad I got that right. Still, we'll use that $10,000 for something else and wait a little bit and fold this into our larger zoning package. That 10,000 could go in all kinds of different ways. There are a lot of people hurting out there right now. All right, that we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes.
Aye. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Do we have any other business? Okay, then we are mercifully adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.